Welcome to Criminal Conversations, where your hosts will take you through some of the most fascinating crime stories in under 20 minutes. If you're looking for a quick and engaging deep dive into the world of true crime, you've come to the right place.
Welcome back to Criminal Conversations. We're diving into some of the most intriguing true crime cases out there, especially those where sports and crime collide. And today, we're tackling a story that left even the most seasoned investigators scratching their heads, the story of Aaron Hernandez.
A name that sends chills down your spine, right?
Absolutely. I mean, picture this. You're a young, powerful tight end for the New England Patriots. You're sharing the field with legends like Tom Brady and Gronk. You're living the dream.
The fame, the fortune, the Super Bowl rings, he seemingly had it all.
Right. But here's the thing. Behind that picture-perfect facade, there were whispers. Red flags popping up left and right, hinting at a much darker side.
A side that would eventually lead to a shocking fall from grace.
Exactly. And that's what we're here to unpack today. This isn't just about the crimes themselves. It's about trying to understand the making of a criminal mind. What forces, what experiences could shape someone who, at least on the surface, had it all? What could lead them to become, well, a killer?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And to even begin to unravel that, we need to go way back to the beginning, to Aaron Hernandez's childhood.
And it was far from idyllic.
Yeah.
So let's talk about his father. What kind of impact did he have on young Aaron?
Well, from numerous accounts, his father was a deeply troubled man. He had a history of violence. And Hernandez's older brother, DJ, has even spoken out about the physical abuse they both endured at the hands of their father.
Wow. That's heavy stuff. So to say their home life was tumultuous would be a massive understatement.
It really would. And then tragedy struck. Imagine experiencing that level of instability, that lack of security, only to lose your father at the tender age of 16.
I can't even imagine. 16 years old. That's got to leave a mark.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, the trauma didn't end there. His mother then entered into a relationship with his cousin's husband, putting even more strain on their already fragile relationship.
Wow. And if that wasn't enough for a young man to process, there were also reports that Hernandez was sexually abused as a child.
Yeah, the reports are there. Difficult to even fathom the impact of that kind of repeated trauma. I mean, you talk about a recipe for disaster, for emotional turmoil.
It's heartbreaking when you consider the psychological impact of those types of experiences, especially at such a crucial developmental stage. It's hard not to see a potential connection to his later behavior.
Exactly. These events, they can leave scars, scars that run deep and can manifest in destructive ways, especially when you consider the impact on brain development.
Oh, so?
Well, these early experiences, they can have a significant effect on the parts of the brain that control emotional regulation, your ability to control your impulses, how you form relationships with others.
Why, it's all connected.
Exactly. So while it's crucial to remember that none of this excuses his actions, it does provide some context.
Absolutely. Yeah. It helps us understand the complexity of the situation a bit more. So we have this young man grappling with immense personal tragedy, abuse, but at the same time, he's got this undeniable talent on the football field. He's excelling at the University of Florida, even becoming a national champion.
Yeah, a true sports phenom.
He's on top of the world. But then the cracks start to show. Failed drug tests, a bar fight where he ruptures someone's eardrum.
It's almost as if he was living a double life. On one hand, you have this incredibly gifted athlete achieving at the highest level, and on the other, this darker, more volatile side struggling to break free.
And the thing is, despite these red flags, the NFL came calling.
They did. It's almost like those warning signs. They were just blips on the radar.
Right. I mean, the New England Patriots, they drafted him knowing about some of these issues. He signs a multi-million-dollar contract, shares the field with superstars. He achieves what so many dream of, a Super Bowl appearance. You'd think this would be it, the turning point, the moment he finally escapes the shadows of his past.
You'd hope so, right? But it seems those shadows, they had a way of lingering. He even went so far as to write letters to every single NFL team.
Wow, really? Every team?
Every single one, offering to undergo bi-weekly drug testing throughout his rookie season, like he was trying to prove something.
It's like he was desperately trying to outrun his past, but it was always right there on his heels.
Exactly. And those demons, well, they weren't just metaphorical. The violence that plagued his childhood, it seemed to resurface. And this time, with a vengeance.
And that brings us to 2012. Just 2 years into his NFL career, He becomes a suspect in a chilling double homicide in Boston.
2 men shot dead in their car after what seemed like a chance encounter with Hernandez at a nightclub.
A nightclub? What happened?
Well, the details are still a bit murky, but from what we can piece together, there was some sort of altercation, something that escalated quickly and ended in senseless violence.
And the prosecution, what was their take on it?
They argued that Hernandez was the triggerman, that he was fueled by some kind of rage, unable to handle a minor disagreement without resorting to extreme measures.
And here's the truly disturbing part. This wasn't an isolated incident. We have to talk about Alexander Bradley.
Ah, yes, Alexander Bradley. Hernandez's former friend, or should I say, the former friend who accused Hernandez of shooting him in the face.
Exactly. That's not something you just brush aside.
Absolutely not. And the details, they're pretty harrowing. Bradley claimed Hernandez had become increasingly paranoid, convinced people were out to get him, and during an argument, well, Hernandez allegedly shot him in the face.
Unbelievable. And to add insult to injury, Hernandez was later indicted for witness intimidation related to that incident as well. Talk about adding fuel to the fire.
Right. It paints a picture of a man spiraling out of control, consumed by paranoia, resorting to violence to silence anyone he perceived as a threat.
It's a chilling thought. And then, in 2013, the case that truly sent shockwaves through the nation, the murder of Odin Lloyd.
Odin Lloyd, a semi-pro football player who also happened to be dating the sister of Hernandez's fiancée.
The plot thickens.
It's a tangled web, isn't it? And incredibly tragic.
So tell me, what do we know about Lloyd's murder?
Well, it wasn't a random act of violence. This was a carefully planned execution. Lloyd was lured to an industrial park in the dead of night and shot multiple times.
This cold-blooded murder.
It would seem so. And the evidence, it was pretty damning. Surveillance footage, cell phone records, witness testimonies, they all pointed to Hernandez's involvement.
It's chilling to think that someone who seemingly had it all, fame, fortune, a promising career, could be capable of such a calculated, ruthless act. This wasn't a bar fight. This was premeditated murder.
And the motive, well, that remains one of the biggest mysteries surrounding the case.
What are some of the theories?
Some speculate Hernandez wanted to silence Lloyd to protect other secrets, perhaps even connected to the double homicide from the previous year.
Wow. So we're talking about a potential cover-up on top of everything else.
It's a possibility. But without concrete answers, it's all just speculation. What we do know is that in the aftermath of Lloyd's murder, the walls were closing in on Hernandez. Fast.
And he knew it.
Oh, he knew it. He was arrested, charged with murder, and ultimately convicted.
His fall from grace was just as swift and brutal as his rise to fame. Stripped of his career, his freedom, his future. All gone.
Just like that. Sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, it was a dramatic and some might say fitting end to a life marred by violence and shrouded in mystery.
But the story doesn't end there, does it?
No, it doesn't. Because it was in death that perhaps the most unsettling chapter of Aaron Hernandez's story began to unfold. Remember those red flags we talked about? Those flashes of uncontrollable rage, the impulsivity?
You mean like that bar fight back in college? When he ruptured that guy's eardrum?
Exactly. And then there's the paranoia, the aggression, the sudden mood swings. These weren't just personality quirks. They could have been symptoms of something much bigger, much more insidious.
You're talking about CTE, right? Chronic traumatic encephalopathy.
Exactly. And when researchers examined Hernandez's brain after his death, what they discovered was shocking.
What did they find?
Severe CTE, like some of the most pronounced damage they had ever witnessed in someone his age.
And just as a reminder for our listeners, CTE is a degenerative brain disease, right? Found in people who've experienced repeated head trauma.
That's right. And we're not just talking about diagnosed concussions here. It's the accumulation of all those hits, even the seemingly minor ones, that players endure over years and years on the field.
Hits that most often don't even get a second look.
Exactly. And the symptoms of CTE, well, they can manifest in a whole bunch of ways. But some of the more common ones, they're eerily similar to what we saw in Hernandez. The mood swings, the uncontrollable anger, the impulsivity, memory issues, paranoia, even dementia in the later stages.
So given all of that, are we saying CTE could have played a role in his violent behavior?
It's impossible to say for sure. We can't turn back the clock. There's no way to untangle all those factors that ultimately led to his actions. It's such a complex equation.
So it's like trying to solve a puzzle, but with some pieces missing. We have these glimpses into his past, these flashes of his behavior, but we can never really know for sure what was going on in his mind.
It really is a mystery. And that's what makes this story, so incredibly complex. Was Hernandez predisposed to violence because of the trauma he experienced in childhood? Did those constant blows to the head during his football career exacerbate those existing tendencies? Did they chip away at his self-control? Or was he, for whatever reason, simply wired differently from the very beginning?
Questions we'll probably never know the answers to.
Unfortunately, yeah. But it does raise another question, and this one might be even more important. Knowing what we know now about CTE, does it change how we view Aaron Hernandez's story?
Does it make us feel differently, knowing his brain, the very core of who he was essentially under attack by this terrible disease?
Exactly, and it goes way beyond just Aaron Hernandez. This story makes you think about all the other athletes out there, in all sports, who might be silently battling the effects of CTE without even realizing it.
A ticking time bomb.
In a way, yes. It's a sobering thought. And it brings us to another critical issue we need to address as a society. How do we reconcile our love for these sports, the thrill of the game, with the very real risks involved for the athletes?
Right, because it's not just football. CTE has been found in athletes from a whole range of contact sports.
Right.
Hockey, boxing, even soccer.
Exactly. It's a wake-up call, a call for the entire sports world to take a long, hard look at itself.
Absolutely. And it's not just about more research and better protocols, though those are incredibly important. Ultimately, a lot of it comes down to individual choice. Athletes need to be aware of the risks.
And they need to feel empowered enough to speak up if something feels off, to prioritize their long-term health, even if it means walking away from the game they love.
And that's a conversation everyone needs to be a part of. Athletes, coaches, parents, fans. It can't just be swept under the rug anymore. The stakes are just too high.
They are. And maybe, just maybe, by having these uncomfortable conversations, by learning from tragedies like Aaron Hernandez's, we can start creating a safer, more informed future for these athletes.
That's the goal, right? So we've spent this episode diving deep into the dark side of the sports world, and we're left with a lot of unanswered questions. Was Aaron Hernandez a victim of his upbringing? Of his biology? Or was he driven by his own choices? Did the violence that he endured in his childhood, coupled with those relentless hits on the football field, create a perfect storm that led him down this destructive path?
It's a puzzle we may never fully solve. But here's what we do know. Aaron Hernandez's story is a tragedy. It's a cautionary tale about the potential costs of athletic glory and a stark reminder of just how important compassion, understanding, and action really are.
It really is. And with that, we'll leave you with his final thought. Knowing what we know now, should we as a society reconsider our relationship with contact sports? Something to think about. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Criminal Conversations. We'll be back next time with another deep dive into the most captivating true crime stories out there. Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.
Thanks for listening to Criminal Conversations. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment to rate and review. It makes a huge difference and really helps us out. All of the sources used for today's episode can be found in the show notes. Join us every Monday and Thursday for a new story and another criminal conversation.